It was the crumpled single-dollar bill that made him stop. An 8-year-old girl in a thin pink coat stood frozen at the pharmacy counter, her dark brown fingers clutching the worn paper. Her voice was barely a whisper, asking if it was enough for the antibiotic syrup. The pharmacist had already begun to shake his head. But behind her, a man in a navy overcoat, a billionaire who knew the precise cost of everything, heard the prescription name. It was the same rare medication his own daughter had needed, the medication she didn't get in time. Her name was Maya. The man was Robert Vance. In that frozen moment, two lives from opposite ends of everything were connected by a tiny bottle of medicine. For Maya, it was a last attempt to stop her little brother's fever from turning into something worse. For Vance, it was a ghost from a past he'd spent a fortune trying to forget. This is the story of what happened when a billionaire, haunted by his own failure, saw a chance to rewrite history. And why that single dollar would unravel a system built to look the other way. Maya's world was 2 rooms at the back of a laundromat on Newark Avenue. 8 years old, and she had been in charge of her 4-year-old brother, Leo, since their mother's day shift turned into a double, then a triple. Ms. Dollars managed the laundromat, and in exchange for keeping an eye on the change machines, she let the family stay in the storage room. It wasn't charity, Ms. Dollars would say. It was business. Maya was good at the job. Leo's cough had started 3 days ago, a dry, ticking sound that grew deeper each night. Their mother, Anna, a home health aide, had left a bottle of cherry-flavored fever reducer and a torn sticky note with instructions. But by the second day, the fever reducer did nothing. Leo burned. He lay on their shared mattress, his breathing a thin, whistling struggle. Maya knew the signs. Last winter, it had been pneumonia. The emergency room visit had cost her mother 2 weeks' pay. Anna had said never again, not if they could help it. So, Maya had helped. She'd bundled Leo up, taken the $11.74 from the coffee tin, the just-in-case money, and walked 6 blocks to the Beacon Pharmacy. The medicine the doctor had prescribed last time was called azithromycin. Maya remembered the name because it was long and important. The pharmacist, a man named Greg with kind eyes but tired shoulders, had looked at her with a pity that felt like a weight. He scanned the old prescription, then winced. "Honey, this is the suspension, the good stuff. Your insurance lapsed last month. Out of pocket, it's $112. Maya had counted out the coins and the single-dollar bill on the counter, the $11.74. "I have this," she'd said, her voice small against the hum of the refrigerated cases. "And I can work, I can sweep, I can organize." Greg had rubbed his forehead. "It doesn't work like that, sweetheart. I could call children's services." Maya's blood had gone cold. She'd seen what happened when children's services came. She started backing away, her hand closing around the dollar bill, the last symbol of a plan that had failed. That's when Robert Vance heard her. Robert Vance hadn't come in for a prescription. He'd come in for antacids, a mundane concession to a 63-year-old stomach that no longer tolerated late-night strategy sessions. He was the founder and majority shareholder of Vance Biogen, a mid-tier pharmaceutical company known for aggressive patents and steady profits. His net worth was listed at $2.4 billion. He lived in a penthouse overlooking the river, in a building he owned. The antacids were an aisle over from the pharmacy counter. The word azithromycin didn't stop him. It was the specific suffix, the DX formula for pediatric suspension, that acted like a spike driven into his ear. His daughter, Eleanor, had a severe immunodeficiency. For the last 18 months of her life, that specific formulation of azithromycin had been a lifeline, a prophylactic to keep the infections at bay. It had cost $400 a bottle. He could have bought the factory that made it. He had eventually, but not in time. The memory was a room in his mind he kept locked. The sound of her struggling to breathe, the frantic calls to distributors, the bottle that arrived 3 days too late. He turned and saw a small girl in a pink coat, her shoulders slumped in a defeat too heavy for her frame, clutching a single dollar. He saw the pharmacist's helpless gesture. He saw, superimposed over it all, Eleanor's face. The system, his system, was about to fail another child. "Put it on my account," Vance said. His voice was not loud, but it carried the quiet, unassailable authority of a man whose words were invoices. Greg the pharmacist blinked. "Mr. Vance, I'm sorry I didn't see you there. Her insurance." "I don't care about her insurance. Bill my corporate account, now, and add a doozing syringe and children's Tylenol." He didn't look at Maya yet. The transaction was a technical problem to be solved first. Behind the counter, Greg processed the order, his fingers clumsy. The total flashed on his screen, $118.16. Vance nodded. A receipt printed. Greg bagged the medicine and handed it to Maya. She stared at the bag, then at Vance, her eyes wide with a confusion that bordered on fear. This wasn't how the world worked. Vance finally crouched down, his knees protesting. He was face to face with a girl who smelled of laundry detergent and worry. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya." "And who's the medicine for Maya?" "My brother Leo. He's really hot." Vance nodded. He reached into his wallet, past the black credit cards, and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. He folded it and pressed it into her hand on top of her crumpled dollar. "This is for groceries, for you and Leo and your mom. The medicine is taken care of. Do you understand?" Maya shook her head. No, she did not understand. "Go home," Vance said, his voice softening. "Help your brother." He stood, his mind already whirring past the moment of charity. The pediatric DX formulation. It was a niche drug off patent for years, but the suspension was tricky to manufacture. Only one company, Chelton Pharma, still produced it in the United States. Vance Biogen had tried to acquire Chelton 2 years prior. The deal fell through. He knew their CEO, a ruthless cost-cutter named David Chelton. He knew their pricing model was aggressive because they had a virtual monopoly on several essential pediatric formulations. This wasn't just a sad story. It was a market failure. It was personal. He waited until Maya, clutching the bag and the money, had disappeared out the door into the freezing afternoon. Then he turned back to Greg. "How often does that happen?" Greg sighed, a sound of profound exhaustion. "A couple times a week, Mr. Vance. Different drug, different kid. Sometimes it's a senior choosing between insulin and food. The co-pays, the deductibles, it's a math problem people fail." Vance left the pharmacy, but he didn't head for his car. He stood on the sidewalk, the city's noise fatting into a buzz. He pulled out his phone and called his executive assistant. "Lydia, cancel my afternoon. Get me the full financials and distribution schematics for Chelton Pharma, and find out everything you can about a home health aide named Anna. She has 2 kids, a girl named Maya and a boy named Leo. They live near the Beacon Pharmacy. Be discreet." He ended the call. This wasn't about guilt. It was about a flaw in the architecture, a flaw that had killed Eleanor, a flaw that had almost killed a little boy named Leo. He had the capital, the influence, and now the catalyst. But as his driver pulled up, a dark sedan with tinted windows slowed across the street. A man watched him from the passenger seat, then pulled out a phone. Vance didn't recognize him, but he recognized the type. Corporate. Observant. The first stirrings of attention from the very system he was about to disrupt. The report on Anna's family landed in Vance's inbox before his car reached the penthouse. It was a dry, 10-page summary that painted a picture in stark data points. Anna Martinez, 31, employed by Home Care Partners, a nationwide chain. She worked an average of 62 hours a week. Her take-home pay, after fees and deductions from the agency, was just under $32,000 a year. She had no employer-sponsored health insurance. The public coverage for her children had lapsed due to a paperwork error she'd appealed twice. The appeal was still pending. Leo's diagnosis from his last emergency visit was severe bronchiolitis, a precursor to pneumonia. The recommended treatment was the azithromycin suspension. The prescribed course, 10 days. The estimated out-of-pocket cost for the uninsured, $112. The average balance in Anna's checking account over the last 90 days, $87. Vance read it standing at his floor-to-ceiling window, the city lights twinkling like indifferent stars. The numbers were a closed loop, a perfect trap. Work more to earn less. Get sick and go bankrupt. He'd seen this pattern before in spreadsheets and market analyses. He'd called it consumer price elasticity. Seeing it attached to a little girl with $1 in her hand made him feel sick. Meanwhile, Maya followed the instructions on the bottle with the focus of a surgeon. She measured the exact milky dose, coaxed it past Leo's lips, and watched. Within 4 hours, the whistling in his chest softened. The frantic heat of his skin began to cool. She sat on the edge of the mattress, her hand on his forehead, feeling the victory of a receding fever. Her mother, Anna, arrived home at 9 p.m., her shoes soaked through from the slush. She saw the medicine bottle on the crate they used as a table and froze. "Maya, what did you do?" Maya told the story in a quiet rush. The pharmacy, the kind man in the nice coat, the bag of medicine, the $100 bill. Anna listened, her exhaustion warring with a rising terror. Kindness from strangers in her experience was never free. It came with strings, with questions, with social workers at the door. She hugged Maya tight, crying with relief that Leo was breathing easier, crying with fear about what this meant. She tucked the $100 bill deep into a coffee tin, a secret she didn't know how to spend. The next morning, Vance was in his office on the 42nd floor. The Chelton Pharma files were spread across his screen. His analysts had worked through the night. Chelton was a classic niche monopolist. They owned the patents on the manufacturing processes for several older, off-patent drugs that were difficult to make, especially in liquid or pediatric formulations. They didn't invent new medicines. They cornered the market on making old ones. Their strategy was simple: buy up or legally challenge any competitor who tried to produce these drugs, then raise prices incrementally but consistently. Insurance companies paid because the alternatives, hospitalization, more expensive branded drugs, cost even more. The uninsured, like Ana Martinez, were simply collateral damage. But one detail snagged Vance's attention. Chelton's primary manufacturing plant for pediatric suspensions was in Ohio. It had failed its last 2 FDA inspections for sterility protocol breaches. Production had been halted for 6 weeks the previous fall. That was the shortage. That was why the price had spiked. David Chelton hadn't fixed the problems. He just leveraged the scarcity. Vance made 2 calls. The first was to his head of corporate development. "We're reviving the Chelton acquisition analysis. I want a hostile takeover blueprint on my desk in 72 hours. Focus on their regulatory vulnerabilities." The second call was to his foundation's director. "I want to establish an emergency medication fund starting locally. No bureaucracy. A pharmacist sees a child in need, they get a code, the cost is covered. We'll backstop it." He was declaring war on 2 fronts. One, a multi-million-dollar corporate raid. The other, a quiet, local act of redemption. 3 days later, Maya was walking Leo home from the corner store, where she'd used $2 of the secret money to buy apples and milk. A black town car pulled up beside them. The window slid down. It was Vance. Maya stiffened, pulling Leo closer. "It's all right, Maya," Vance said. "I wanted to see how your brother was doing." Leo, bundled up, peered at him. "I'm better," he announced hoarsely. "Good, that's very good." Vance looked at Maya. "And your mother, is she okay?" Maya nodded, silent, her guard up. Vance reached into the car and pulled out a simple white envelope. "This is for her. It's not money, it's information. Legal help to fix your health insurance. And a phone number for a doctor who will see Leo for free anytime." He held it out. "Will you give it to her?" Maya, after a long moment, took the envelope. It was light, it didn't feel dangerous. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome," Vance said. The window slid up and the car pulled away. He hadn't done it for gratitude. He'd done it to see if the help would be accepted. It was a test for them and for himself. Anna reacted to the envelope not with suspicion, but with a desperate, focused hope. She called the legal aid number the next day. Within a week, An advocate had untangled the Medicaid red tape. Leo's coverage was reinstated, retroactive. The $100 bill in the coffee tin could now become groceries, real groceries. But in the world of high finance, moves are never silent. David Chelton, a wiry man with a permanent smirk, got word of Vance's renewed interest in his company. He saw the regulatory analysis requests. He heard whispers about the emergency pharmacy fund. To Chelton, this wasn't philanthropy. It was a targeted market intervention, a threat. He placed a call to a board member they shared at a regional hospital network. Robert's gotten emotionally involved. He's making irrational decisions. It's bad for business for all our businesses. The message was clear: rein in your billionaire or we will. The pressure arrived subtly. A planned joint venture between Vance Biogen and a hospital group was suddenly delayed for review. A negative profile about drug pricing appeared in a business journal, subtly questioning the viability of Vance's core generics division. The system was flexing, reminding Vance of his place in the ecosystem. He was in his office, reviewing the hostile takeover blueprint, a plan that involved leveraging Chelton's FDA violations to drive down its stock price before a buyout, when his assistant Lydia buzzed. "Mr. Vance, there's a Ms. Dollars on the line. She says she manages a laundromat and it's about Maya. She insists on speaking to you." Vance picked up. "This is Robert Vance." The voice on the other end was tough, no nonsense. "Mr. Vance, the girl Maya, her mother Anna, she didn't come home last night. She's not answering her phone. Maya won't say nothing, but she's scared. Leo's asking for his mom. I got my own business to run. I can't. I thought you should know." Ice water flooded Vance's veins. The corporate machinations, the takeover plans, they evaporated. A child was alone. "Where are they?" he asked, already standing, grabbing his coat. "Back room of the Suds Inn, dries on Newark. But listen, I don't want trouble." "There won't be any trouble," Vance said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "I'm on my way." He took the private elevator down to the garage, his mind racing. Anna wouldn't just disappear. The home health agency. He called Lydia from the car. "Get me the contact for Home Care Partners right now. Find out where Anna Martinez was assigned yesterday." As his driver navigated the afternoon traffic, Lydia called back. "Mr. Vance, I spoke to Home Care Partners. They said Anna Martinez failed to show up for her shift this morning at a long-term care facility. She's been terminated for cause. They have no further information." Terminated? Vance's knuckles were white. He thought of the dry report. 62 hours a week, $32,000 a year, no safety net. One missed shift and the trapdoor opens. The laundromat was a bubble of warm, humid air and the rhythmic thump of dryers. Ms. Dollars, a woman with sharp eyes and arms crossed over her apron, nodded him toward a door marked "Private." Vance pushed it open. The room was small, dominated by the hum of the building's water heater. Maya sat on the mattress, Leo curled asleep beside her. She was reading him a book, her voice steady, but her eyes were red-rimmed. When she saw Vance, the book lowered. Fear, then a flicker of something else. Recognition crossed her face. "Maya," Vance said, crouching in the cramped space. "Where's your mom?" Maya's chin trembled. "She got a call last night, a special job," she said. "A 24-hour sit with a patient, good money. She left at 10. She said she'd be back this morning." A tear escaped. "She always calls. She didn't call." Vance's phone buzzed. It was Lydia again, her voice tense. "Sir, I did some digging. The long-term care facility where Anna was assigned yesterday, it's owned by a subsidiary of the Chelton Family Trust. David Chelton's brother is on the board." The pieces slammed together with a terrifying clarity. This wasn't a coincidence. Anna's disappearance wasn't bad luck. It was a message. A brutal, unambiguous message sent by David Chelton. "You look into my business. I remove the subject of your curiosity." Vance looked at Maya, holding onto bravery for her sleeping brother. He looked at Leo, alive because of $100 bottle of medicine. The cold, corporate fury that had driven him for decades transformed into something white-hot and personal. "You're coming with me," he said to Maya, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Both of you, we're going to find your mother." This was no longer a corporate raid or a philanthropic project. A line had been crossed. David Shelton had turned a mother into a pawn, and Robert Vance was about to show him what happened when you made a billionaire's crusade personal. Vance's penthouse was not a home, it was a fortress of glass and silence. To Maya and Leo, trailing behind him on the marble floor, it was an alien planet. A silent housekeeper was summoned, her instructions simple: feed them, find them pajamas, keep them safe. Vance retreated to his study, the door closing on the sound of Leo's quiet questions. He had one objective now: find Ana Martinez. He mobilized resources that operated in the shadows. A former federal investigator on his private security payroll began tracing Ana's last known movements. Another team started digital surveillance on David Shelton and his brother, Michael Shelton, who sat on the board of the Granite Hills Care Facility. Vance's lawyers began drafting injunctions and subpoena requests, a legal blitzkrieg designed to shake trees. The first break came not from a high-tech trace but from human desperation. At 2 a.m., Vance's personal phone, a number only 10 people had, rang. It was Ana. Her voice was a thin, choked whisper, heavy with static. "Mr. Vance, Maya, are they?" "They're safe, Ana. They're with me. Where are you?" A sob of relief, then fear. "I don't know. A motel. They brought me here. They took my phone. I found this old one in the drawer. It had a little battery. I remembered the number Maya said was on the envelope." "Who brought you?" "Men from the agency, home care. They said I had to come. It was an emergency private duty, but it was. They drove me out of the city. They said I had to sign a paper saying I quit, that I made a medication error. I refused. They left me here. They said to think about my choices." Her voice broke. "They said they'd call child services about Maya and Leo, about the living situation. They'd take them." Vance's blood ran cold. It was a classic squeeze play. Isolate, threaten, coerce. They weren't just hiding her. They were trying to manufacture a reason to fire her and discredit her, making any future whistleblowing or legal claims look like the grudge of a negligent employee. "Ana, listen to me. Does the motel have a name, any landmark?" It's the Starlight. I can see the sign. It's cracked. We're near a highway. I hear trucks." "Stay there. Do not open the door for anyone but me. I am coming right now." He was out the door in 60 seconds, 2 security detail cars falling in behind his sedan. The Starlight Motel was a grim 60-mile drive away in a forgotten industrial corridor. While his driver pushed the car to its limits, Vance worked the phone. He called the head of Home Care Partners directly, bypassing all intermediaries. "This is Robert Vance. You have an employee, Ana Martinez, who is being illegally detained and coerced. You will call off your dogs immediately, or I will own your company by the end of the week, and I will bury you in litigation so deep you'll need a map to see daylight." He didn't wait for a response. He hung up and called his lawyer. "File the kidnapping complaint with the state police. Now, name Home Care Partners and the Shelton Family Trust as potential conspirators." He arrived at the Starlight just before dawn. Ana was in room 17. When she opened the door, she looked years older, shivering in her thin coat. Without a word, he wrapped his own overcoat around her shoulders and guided her to the car. On the drive back, she told him everything. The special job had been at the Granite Hills facility. She'd been assigned to a wing that was supposed to be closed for renovation. But it wasn't empty. It housed a handful of patients, all on heavy sedation. She'd seen crates of medical supplies, unlabeled, being moved. She'd overheard 2 supervisors arguing about inventory write-offs and the Ohio shipment. She asked a simple question: who was her patient's attending physician? For that, she was escorted out, driven here, and threatened. "They're doing something wrong there, Mr. Vance. Something with the medicine." The puzzle pieces Vance had been holding, Chelten's FDA violations, the pediatric drug shortages, the care facility connection, suddenly clicked into a horrifying picture. This wasn't just price gouging. This was diversion. The illegal rerouting of prescription drugs, often from palliative or hospice care, to be repackaged and sold on the black market or to shady distributors. It explained the sterility breaches at the Ohio plant. It wasn't incompetence. It was a cover for a leak in the supply chain. Children like Leo couldn't get medicine because it was being stolen and sold out the back door. He brought Anna back to the penthouse. The reunion with her children was a silent, tearful crush of arms and whispered promises. Vance watched from the doorway, the outsider again, but now a necessary one. He gave them space, returning to his study. David Chelton called an hour later. His voice was smooth, all faux concern. "Robert, I hear you've had a busy night, involving yourself in personnel disputes, making wild accusations. It's beneath you." "Where is the diverted inventory, David?" Vance's voice was flat, cold. "The product from your plant that failed inspection. Is it in the closed wing at Granite Hills?" A beat of silence. The smirk was gone from Chelton's voice. "You're speculating, and speculation is dangerous. You have a company to run, shareholders, a reputation. Don't throw it away over a sentimental attachment." "My daughter's name was Alina. She died because a drug your company made was too expensive and too scarce. This was never sentiment. It was always a reckoning. You just made it personal." Vance ended the call. The war was now out in the open. The next move came fast and from an unexpected direction. The state medical board, citing an anonymous complaint, opened an inquiry into the charitable Dr. Vance had connected with Anna's family, suggesting improper prescription practices. It was a warning shot, meant to tie up Vance's allies in bureaucracy. Then, a financial blow. 3 of Vance Biogen's largest institutional investors called an emergency meeting. They'd heard rumors of a rogue hostile takeover and personal litigation that was exposing the company to massive liability. They demanded Vance step back, or they would vote to install an independent chairman to oversee his actions. He was being boxed in, his power levers systematically disabled. He stood to lose everything he'd built: his company, his autonomy, his ability to fight. That evening, Maya found him in the study, staring at the city lights. She held a drawing, a stick figure of a man in a coat next to a tall building under a yellow sun. "This is you," she said, placing it on his desk. "At your work. It's not a sad house." He looked at the drawing, then at her. "My house used to be sad, after my daughter." Maya nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Our house is sad when Mama is gone. Now it's not gone." She paused, her small face serious. "The bad man, the one who took Mama, is he bigger than you?" It was the most acute question he'd been asked. "In some ways, yes," he admitted. "He plays a dirtier game. My mama says when a bigger kid pushes you, you don't push back at the kid. You tell the teacher so everyone can see." She said it plainly, then wandered back to where Leo was watching cartoons. Vance sat perfectly still. "You tell the teacher so everyone can see." The corporate raids, the private investigations, the legal threats. He was playing Chelton's game, on a field the man had spent years corrupting. He was trying to beat a cheater at his own sport. Maya, in her simple childhood logic, had pointed to the flaw. The only way to beat a system that thrives in darkness is to drag it into the light. He picked up the phone, not to his lawyer or his security chief. He called the one person he knew who could amplify a story to a national audience, a relentless investigative journalist named Sarah Bennett, who had once written a profile on him he'd hated for its accuracy. "Sarah, it's Robert Vance. I have a story for you. It's about drug diversion, corporate intimidation, and a little girl with a dollar bill. But I need to give you more than a story. I need to give you proof." He was about to burn his own world down to save someone else. He would take the battle public, exposing not just Chelton, but his own company's past complacency, the entire broken system. It was the nuclear option. And as he began to outline everything to Sarah, the FDA reports, the financial links, Anna's testimony, the motel, the threat to the children, he realized Maya was right. This wasn't a push. It was telling the teacher, and the whole world was about to watch. Sarah Bennett's article did not just break the news, it detonated it. Titled "The Dollar and the Billionaire: How a Child's Medicine Exposed a Pipeline of Greed," it landed on the front page of the Sunday edition and spread across the internet in minutes. It wove together everything: Meyer at the pharmacy, Vance's tragic past, the FDA violations at Chelten's plant, Anna's kidnapping and testimony about the Granite Hills facility, and the financial links between the Chelten Family Trust and the network of care homes. It was not an accusation, it was a documented narrative, and it named names. The fallout was swift and seismic. By Monday morning, the state attorney general's office, flooded with public outrage, announced a multi-agency task force to investigate drug diversion and Medicaid fraud. The FBI opened a separate inquiry into the interstate transportation of stolen pharmaceuticals. The stock price of Chelten Pharma evaporated, losing 60% of its value in the first hour of trading. David Chelten and his brother were forced to resign from all corporate boards by noon. Vance did not escape unscathed. His board of directors, panicked by the exposure and the looming legal battles, made good on their threat. They voted to install an independent chairman, stripping Vance of operational control of Vance Biogen. He was now a figurehead in his own company. The financial press called it a stunning fall. He read the headlines in his penthouse, feeling not defeat but a profound, quiet relief. The prison of his own creation had finally opened. His first call was to Anna. "The story is out. You and the children are safe. The people who threatened you are finished." There was a long silence on the line. Then Anna asked, "And you? What happens to you now?" "I'm figuring that out," he said. And for the first time it felt like the truth, not an evasion. With the legal machinery now grinding in the right direction, Vance turned to the practical work of repair. He used his remaining personal capital to do three things. First, he established the Billionaire and Leo Fund, a nonprofit with a simple mandate: cover the copay or full cost of essential pediatric medications for any family that pharmacists identified as in need. He funded it with a personal endowment of $50 million. The board would be chaired by Ana Martinez, who understood the problem from the ground. Second, he bought the Suds N Dries laundromat from Ms. Dollars at a generous price and converted the back rooms into a proper, if small, apartment for Anna, Maya, and Leo. He then transferred the building's title to Anna's name. It was not a gift, he explained. It was back pay for 8 years of invisible labor and a down payment on her future. Anna, after a week of stunned silence, accepted. She enrolled in an accelerated nursing program, her tuition covered by the fund. Third, and most surprising to the business world, Vance took the blueprint for the hostile takeover of Chelten Pharma and handed it, free of charge, to a consortium of generic drug manufacturers committed to ethical pricing. Within 4 months, Chelten was acquired, broken up, and its vital production lines for pediatric medications were restarted under strict oversight. The price of the azithromycin suspension dropped by 70%. On a cool spring morning, Vance stood outside the newly refurbished laundromat. The sign now read Martinez Laundry and Care. Anna had insisted on keeping the washers and dryers. They were a good business, she said, and the rhythm of work was honest. Maya and Leo burst out the door, Maya heading to school, Leo to a nearby preschool, his lungs clear. They waved at Vance before running off. Anna joined him on the sidewalk, holding 2 mugs of coffee. She handed him one. "You look different," she said. "I sleep at night," he replied. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood wake up. Anna spoke first. "That journalist, Sarah, she asked me why I thought you did all this. I told her it was for your daughter." Vance nodded, staring into his coffee. "It was, but it stopped being just for her around the time your daughter asked if the bad man was bigger than me." Anna smiled. "She's a truth teller, that one. She sipped her coffee. The fund got its first letter yesterday from a grandmother in Texas. She said she got medicine for her grandson because of the story. She called it a miracle. Vance felt a tightness in his chest that wasn't the arrhythmia. It was the sound of a locked door finally opening. It wasn't a miracle, Anna. It was a choice, one anyone could make. But you were the one who made it, she said softly, when no one else did. The final surprise came not from a courtroom, but from a warehouse in Ohio. As part of the federal investigation into Chelton, agents raided a long-term storage facility linked to the family trust. Buried among falsified shipping manifests, they found a sealed archival box. Inside were the master formulation records and quality control logs for dozens of drugs, including the pediatric azithromycin, going back 15 years. Taped to the inside lid was a hand-written note on faded corporate letterhead. It read, "If found, deliver to Robert Vance. He'll know what to do. Alina Vance, summer intern, quality assurance 2008. Vance's lawyers delivered the box to him. He sat alone in his study for hours, holding the note in his trembling hands. His daughter, in the summer before her junior year of college, had done an internship at Chelton, a company he was then considering investing in. She'd never mentioned it. She must have seen the lax protocols, the corners being cut. She hidden the evidence, a quiet act of defiance, hoping one day someone would use it. She had been trying to fix the system even then. And now, a decade after her death, her small, brave act had completed the circle. Her father, prompted by another child in need, had finally become the person she'd hoped would find it. He donated the entire archive to the FDA, dedicating it in Alina's name. The resulting regulatory overhaul of niche drug manufacturing was dubbed Alina's Protocol. The story had reached its end. The villain was disgraced. The family was safe. The system was, in a small way, repaired. But as Robert Vance walked away from the Martinez home that day, he understood the real payoff was not in the headlines or the settlements. It was in the quiet, ordinary sight of a little boy breathing easily. It was in the determined focus of a mother studying for her exams. It was in the weight of a single dollar bill, now framed on his wall, a reminder that the most powerful currency in the world is not money, but attention. The choice to see someone and the courage to act. So what does this story leave us with? Not just a tale of a billionaire's redemption or a family's rescue, but a map of how change actually happens. It starts not with grand designs, but with a moment of unavoidable seeing. A child's trembling hand, a name on a prescription bottle, a choice to not look away. Robert Vance, Anna, Maya, and Leo remind us that our systems are not made of brick and steel, but of countless human choices. The choice to inflate a price, the choice to ignore a maintenance log, the choice to threaten a mother, but also the choice to pay for a stranger's medicine, the choice to share a truth, the choice to protect a child. For every lever of cruelty, there is a counter lever of compassion. The architecture of the world is forever being rebuilt by the quiet, decisive acts of ordinary people. The lingering question is what one billionaire did with his resources. It's what we do with our attention. In a world that encourages us to scroll past, to tune out, to mind our own business, the most radical act may be to simply notice. To see the person right in front of you in their struggle, in their need, and to ask the simplest and most powerful question. What can I do? Maybe it's covering a copay. Maybe it's advocating for a better policy. Maybe it's just listening. Every system, no matter how broken, is sustained by collective indifference. And every repair begins with individual courage. Maya's dollar bill, now in a frame, is more than a keepsake. It is a testament to the fact that the smallest currency, when paired with the greatest attention, can change the course of lives. It is proof that we are all connected in a web of consequence and care. If this story resonated with you, consider what it means to truly see the people in your own orbit. Who in your world is holding a single dollar against $100 problem? Your attention could be the bridge they need. Thank you for spending this time with us. for leaning into a story about what happens when we choose to look. If you believe in the power of these narratives to remind us of our shared humanity, please support this channel. Hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story that challenges us to look closer, to dig deeper, to care more fiercely. We leave you with this. The world is full of invisible scripts, of quiet struggles and unseen heroes. Your attention is the spotlight. Where will you point it next?